The race weekend is starting in Jeddah, and teams have brought plenty of different configurations, some slight upgrades, to try and have the most speed possible on our lowest downforce track yet. Now, the Jeddah GP is unique. It's a lot of high-speed corners, but you also need top speed because it's pretty much straights, even though they are considered turns. And finding that compromise is very interesting. Sometimes teams lack the actual downforce to go through Sector 1 properly, but are super quick in Sector 2 and 3. We saw that with Mercedes in 24. And other times they're fast in Sector 1 and then slow in Sector 2 and 3, which is the majority of the lap. But we got some new bits to go over, and this should be a very exciting weekend. This track makes for a lot of fun. Wanted to thank you guys for the support. Amazing per usual. We're at 80,000, which is just ridiculous. And now we're 20K from 100. I would love to hit that before the summer break. Would mean the world. So if you're new here, please go ahead and subscribe. It truly helps me out a lot and pushes the channel out to more of you. Let's talk about our 2025 upgrades and really everything we need to know about this weekend. The first thing I wanted to talk about was the track that's being planned to be built in Saudi Arabia that I think will take over what is now the Jeddah GP, which will be in Qiddiya City. And I mean, this thing literally looks like it's out of a video game. I wanted to hear your guys' thoughts on this. I think it looks pretty sick. And to think our sport will have something as ridiculous like this. Las Vegas is cool, but I can't explain it in any different way. It literally just looks fake. But as I said, it's going to be a big talking point on rear wings today. Think of this as rear wing talk pretty much, because that is the most important part in Jeddah. There are some upgrades to these rear wings, but I want to talk about downforce specs, looking at Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes, and McLaren. Now, we have seen some of these rear wings. There is a newly upgraded rear wing on the Ferrari, so the one that we have here pictured by Albert Fabrega isn't going to be the one that we actually end up seeing on track. There is a better picture of that one, which I will talk about shortly. So I will mention it here because there's a possibility, but I will talk about the newly upgraded one as well. Looking at Red Bull, we have seen this rear wing before. It is their slightly lower downforce, a 2 out of 5. Isn't as chunky as some of the other previous rear wings we've seen. In Bahrain, they had a bigger rear wing. I still think it's a little hefty. It's closer to a 3 out of 5 than a 2 out of 5. But if you gotta give it some rating spec, it's mid to low downforce. And the Red Bull car has been pretty decent in top speed. They've been somewhere around the middle. High speed has always been their strong suit when it comes to that car. And I believe this will be a much better track. It's front limited, that's what the Red Bull likes. Any rear limited tracks, I think they're going to struggle because of the lack of downforce in the rear and it being a very front and pointy car. But for Red Bull, a mid to low downforce. Now looking at Ferrari, we've seen this rear wing so many times, and actually the upgraded one isn't too different. This is the same spec we've seen in now Bahrain, even Japan, Australia, and I actually think we've seen it for every single GP so far. And this is still their 3 out of 5 medium downforce rear wing. Looking at Mercedes, they have brought the same wing they had in Bahrain, yet again going with medium downforce. They're going to be reliant on that floor. If you look at top speeds in Bahrain, they were the quickest out of all the teams. So I think they're pretty confident on what they have. They might be a little bit down on a team like McLaren, who has a much lower downforce rear wing to them. But so far, the talk and really the rumors in the paddock have Mercedes up there with McLaren, and it could be a challenge. I mean, George has been phenomenal this season. He hasn't really put a foot wrong, even when so many problems occurred in Bahrain. So I do expect them to be close. It is a bit interesting that they haven't gone for a bit lower downforce, but they've struggled on this track ever since the start of these regulations, whether that be they bring too much downforce or too little downforce. It's one or the other. And lastly, McLaren. Now, you could kind of consider this an upgrade. They've had this rear wing from the beginning of the season, but they didn't end up using it in Australia. It was just tested for FP1. Then when the rain was announced and we knew it was going to be a bit more downforce for that track, they ended up resorting to their typical medium 3 out of 5 rear wing. But they've brought this back from Australia in FP1. Very low downforce. As we can see, a lot of focus on the upper plane. The lower plane is super small. And now that middle dip is more V'd out than it is U-shaped typically. And it's going to be hard to beat a team with such balanced downforce throughout the car. They're great in the rear, in the front. Yes, it is a little bit of a tricky car to get under. Definitely Lando is struggling. I expect Oscar to be phenomenal here though. So it's going to be tough to stop a guy like that. Looking at the next 4 teams we have pictured, we have Aston Martin, Haas, Alpine slightly pictured with the DRS Open, and we have Racing Bulls, who has a very interesting rear wing. Looking at Aston, they have also tested this rear wing. We saw it in China at some point. Looking at it like this, it is a 2 out of 5, closer to 3 out of 5, something similar to that of the Red Bull. They don't have that middle cutout, which is real interesting here, and it's a lot more simple than what they typically have on the rear of their car. But yes, 2 out of 5, they need the top speed. It's not like they've been super draggy. The car is just missing a lot. This should be a better track for them. I still have very high doubts as this team has just struggled everywhere so far. High speed corners have been the best trait of the car, but it's not like it's a standout trait. It's just a decent trait. Now looking at Haas, their rear wing is also mid to low downforce, just like the Aston Martin, closer to that of medium downforce, but still a 2 out of 5 if you put it on a scale. They're a team that I have pretty high expectations for. They did struggle in high speed in the beginning of the season, but as the season has progressed, a couple of upgrades brought to the car, they've done better, so gotta give them props. Now, there's not much to look at here on the Alpine, but if you look at the lower plane, you can tell that this rear wing is different to what they've used previously. It is going to be a 2 out of 5. Unfortunately, the DRS is open, so we can't talk too much about the upper plane, but looking at Racing Bulls, I would definitely say if you put it on a scale, it's still not exactly 2 out of 5. It's almost even closer to a really low downforce ring, practically Monza spec. And this is a team that's done okay in the straights. They've not been great. They are still a bit draggy. And they talked about how simple the car is and that these expectations of the points they've really gotten, how high they've been in qualifying is unexpected. But that's a very low downforce rear wing. I expect sector 2 and 3 to be very quick. They might struggle in sector 1 unless that floor is doing magic there for the team. This is the last regulation period that we have these regs. So we could see a difference in philosophy as we've seen throughout the grid, some 3 out of 5, and then the Racing Bulls has the most extreme. And I do have one more rear wing. And you guys have came in my head a little bit for this, not covering every single team, but I don't take these pictures. If I was taking the pictures, I would love to get all 10 teams and I would love to make a 20-minute video. Unfortunately, I go off of what we can see and a lot of different sources that I have to pull out of. And we do have a picture of the Stake F1 car. They're running a 2 out of 5. This is an upgraded rear wing to what they've previously ran. They've been pretty bulky on the rear. The car in the straights is actually pretty quick. It's one of the only decent traits about the Sauber, but high speed has been struggling big time, especially in dirty air. This car has no plane to downforce, and it seems to be definitely the trend going amongst the grid. That dirty air is extremely strong this year, and it's hindering a lot of teams' performances when they're behind. The only team I don't have pictured is Williams. Unfortunately, I would like to see what they're rocking. They've been rocking with the same rear wing since the beginning, so I don't know if I would have changed, but I have every other team. Now looking at the modified, what they call an upgrade to the Ferrari rear wing. Yet again, Auto Racer IT, you guys should definitely check out their news, as they're very fair and they always get great pictures. We have the Spec 1 and Spec 2. Spec 1 is the one that we saw that was pictured when we saw the 4 different teams. And that's the rear wing we've seen them run on so many different previous GPs. Spec 2, as you can see, they've changed a little bit of that upper flap to promote a little bit more flow towards the center of that rear wing. And really, these are just revisions. This was actually brought to Bahrain, was never used. But we can expect different beam wings to be put on this car to see what ends up giving them the most top speed. I don't have that pictured, unfortunately, but beam wings make a huge difference in these cars on whether or not they have the top speed to perform from track to track. It's been a lot more important than it was in previous regulations. It's played a big factor on these teams' downforce and top speed. But that's going to do it from my end. Saudi Arabia, it's going to be a very good GP, should be very fun, it should be very close as well. It's not going to be like McLaren should have a huge advantage here like we expected in Bahrain. But I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Who do you think is looking like the best team? Who's going to perform? Please leave a like, subscribe, it would mean the world, and peace.